So, thanks everybody for joining us on what is the second episode now in the third season of our International Perspectives on Corpus Technology for Language Learning online seminar series hosted by myself, the University of Queensland, and our colleagues at the State University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. It's our great pleasure to have another wonderful speaker tonight who complements the speaker we had last week with what is a new record for us of about 230 participants, again showing that just great level of interest in corpus technology, corpus approaches to language learning. And our speaker this week, Professor Dr. Yukio Tono from the Tokyo University of Foreign Studies is going to talk about using Corpora for reference level descriptions of the CEFR and the CEFR-J. I'm Peter Crosthwaite, Senior Lecturer in Applied Linguistics at the University of Queensland, and it's a pleasure to have you all here again tonight. Before we begin, as is customary in Australia and any kind of public meeting or situation, I'd just like to begin with an acknowledgement of country, whereby the University of Queensland and myself acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands for the online space in which we meet today. We pay our respects to their ancestors and descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country while recognizing their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So tonight we have with us Professor Dr. Yukio Tono from Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. He's professor in corpus linguistics there, and his research interest is corpus applications for foreign language learning. It may come as no surprise that recently he's working on how to integrate corpus approaches with CEFR-based research. So, without any further ado, let me introduce Professor Tono, and you can now begin to share your screen and to begin your talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful online series of talk. And welcome everyone. My name is Yukio Tono at Tokyo University of Foreign Studies in Japan. Today, I would like to share some of my research activities involving the corpus linguistics and its application in the CFR-related pedagogical research. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay, can you all see the screen?
Everything looks fine, Yukio.
Okay, thanks. Then let me start. So this is the title. Today, I will share one of the projects I'm working on, which is basically how to implement the CFR in the context of ELT in Japan. As you know, the CFR has been around for 20 years since its publication in 2001. And recently, in 2020, the revised version entitled Companion Volume was published. We really want to explore how the CFR kind of idea can be implemented into a particular localized context. Our university has 28 language majors. So, we trying to build certain kind of system for English first, but hopefully we would like to apply it to other 27 languages as well. The Council of Europe claims that CFR is a descriptive tool. So, as this diagram shows, when you use a CFR, you can describe your current language policy in your country or in your district or at your school. Not only that, you can describe your syllabus and curriculum guidelines, and also design of teaching and learning materials, and the assessment, how assessment is made for a particular language proficiency. So this diagram shows some important concepts, from the book. This is a kind of diagram I created in order to kind of explain some very important concepts discussed in the CFR. CFR uses those terms as a kind of common meta language. For example, as you are familiar with the level, the vertical axis shows the CFR levels. The most recent companion volume started with the level pre-A1. Actually, the CEFR-J invented the lowest level pre-A1, which was actually integrated into the revised version of the CFR. And so this vertical axis shows the levels. In contrast, when you look
sir, your mic is off.
I can't hear.
Mr. Yukio.
Yukio, I'm sorry that something happened where you were muted there. Were you able to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry about that.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
am I speaking in silence for some
No,
time?
no, not the whole time, just temporarily.
Just temporarily, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe I touched some buttons, sorry. Anyway, so a vertical axis, it shows a level, and the horizontal axis shows several aspects of communicative proficiency. One is the aspect of communicative language activities represented by the four modes of communication: production, reception, interaction, and mediation. And secondly, it shows communicative language strategies. What kind of strategies are involved are specified in the chapter 4 or the later chapters after language activities. And finally, communicative language competence. What kind of communicative language ability, competence you should have in order to perform certain tasks at the given CFR level. And for all these aspects, the CFR proposed a set of illustrative can-do descriptors, showing how users can perform particular language activities, how they employ strategies, or what kind of communicative competence they have at a given CFR level. Now, let's move on to the reference level descriptions. The CFR is a descriptive tool, but in order to implement the idea of the CFR into a particular independent individual language, you need a process so-called reference level descriptions. We call it Rld for short. And this is the explanation given by the Council of Europe website. This is a little bit wordy, but actually it says that the reference level description is a kind of a make the CFR a little bit more tangible. Focusing on a particular individual language, you have to select what kind of language points have to be offered or introduced at the given CFR level. And second quote says, these RLDs are made up of words of a language rather than general descriptors. Please remember that the original CFR is a language neutral framework. So all the descriptions are, written in the style of so-called illustrative descriptors. Verbally, it describes how users can perform language tasks in different situations with the different topics at a different level. but it doesn't say anything about the particular vocabulary or grammar in the framework. So in order to implement the CFR into a particular individual language, you actually think about what kind of words to help learners perform the particular task. If the level is becoming difficult, then the vocabulary and grammar will be more complex or complicated. So, you really have to think carefully what kind of vocabulary, words, and maybe other pragmatic, knowledge will be needed in order to perform a language task at the given CFR level. That's the process of specifying language points and language items with specific words and grammar for a particular language. That's called reference level descriptions. And let's look at how. And let's look at how this kind of ILD work can be done. The Council of Europe proposed three approaches. One is the intuitive method. For example, in the intuitive method, language specialists, like expert teachers, produce language profiles largely based upon their own experience or insights as expert users and teachers. So they don't usually rely on any objective data or criteria. In the case of qualitative method, profiles can be produced based upon the surveys of available, for example, available CFR-based course books or textbooks, as well as expert judgments about what to include for each CFR level. They use some kind of external sources for reference, but they do not analyze it quantitatively. They use it for qualitative analysis. And third one is a quantitative method, counting the occurrences, words and grammar items in CFR level classified text, for example, and identifying the points where they are first introduced or consistently used. So this is a quantitative method trying to identify the stage or the time during the acquisition process when to introduce or when to start using a particular language item. Now let's move on to Rld projects for English. In the case of English, there are three major Rld projects. The Council of Europe actually listed only English profile as a primary Rld work authorized by the Council of Europe. But when we look at the methodological aspect, these three RLDs have a different methodological focus, which is quite interesting. One is the British Council equals core inventory for general English. It's a really good example of intuitive qualitative methods. The panel of experts, which include the original author of the CFR, Brian North, they examined available course books based on the CFR, and also identified vocabulary, grammar, language functions, and text types appropriate for each CFR level. They rely on some kind of textbook analysis for objective data source, but at the same time, they are trying to make a final decision based upon their, expert judgments, which is sometimes quite subjective. They also provided a series of so-called scenarios, such as Out Together for A2, or title Online Forum for B1, where the scenario demonstrates how to put all those language points together into actual communicative activities. So which is actually quite concrete, very good samples, so that lay language teachers without much knowledge of the CFR can understand, how to implement the core ideas of the CFR into actual practice. On the other hand, the English profile program are quite scientific in nature. The group of researchers at the Cambridge, as well as Cambridge University Press and Cambridge English Assessment, they formed the kind of a committee called English Profile Program. And they used the Corpora intensively, especially Cambridge Learner Corpus. And they compare the frequency of occurrences and various language features across learner output by different CFR levels. And they produced two major resources. One is the English vocabulary profile, and the other one is the English grammar profile. Also, they published several monographs called English Profile Series, and some of them, Filipovich, and I think, actually one, Hawkins, yes. Hawkins and Filipovich reported on the initial and the final results of so-called criteria feature identification for each CFR level. So not only they just, arrange all the grammar and vocabulary points at the different CFR levels, but they picked some really important criteria features for grammar items, which distinguish one CFR level from the rest. And they use this kind of information for identifying the CFR level of a text in writing and speech. And they also automated tools for assessing the CFR level, like linear scales and others. Okay, the last one is a commercial project by Pearson Education called Global Scale of English, based on research involving over 6,000 teachers from more than 50 countries. It sort of extends the CFR by precisely pointing out on a scale from 10 to 90, what needs to be mastered for the 4 skills of speaking, listening, reading, and writing within a CFR level. So they used a more granular approach. They did this based upon the self-judgment rating scores for various lexical and grammatical categories by the expert teachers all around the world. And they calibrated the grammar and vocabulary items and can-do descriptors on a scale of 10 to 90 using Rush analysis. In this sense, GSC is really quantitative, but not based upon learner corpora or learner output, but on the so-called maybe collective intelligence of expert teachers. So they grouped together, assembled teachers' perspectives collectively and trying to identify the appropriate CFR levels for particular grammar items. Very interesting approach. Having said that, one thing which needs some caution is that each project has different methods. So the profiling results are a little bit different from profile to profile. Also, replicability is a little bit questionable because they haven't provided the original data set publicly available. So, unfortunately, we have no way to validate the results, from the third party viewpoint. Now, let's move on to my project. Since time is limited, this is a kind of overview of my project. The aim is twofold. One is we are genuinely interested in how this kind of framework can be constructed methodologically in a scientific objective way, and how to validate, the construction of the certain framework. So we would like to know the method of constructing the framework, as well as evaluating, what kind of method is good or bad. Also, we are very much interested in constructing a localized version of the CFR for a specific English language teaching context in Japan. And we had several phases of research, and this is kind of a historical description. So maybe I will just quickly go through this. At the very first stage, we had sort of a worldwide survey of language benchmarks and what kind of learning objectives each country has for English language teaching. And then we met the CFR back in 2004. It was a couple of years after the first release of the CFR. And we decided that, okay, CFR is coming. Probably this will become a very strong tool for us. So that's why we decided to focus on how to apply the CFR for ELT in Japan. And second phase, phase one, we started to develop the CEFR-J, which is a localized adapted version. So we went through all the training session by the experts we invited from Europe. And Tony Green and other people came, Nick Saville, they came and gave us instruction about how to write the descriptors. And we wrote hundreds of descriptors, and out of them we selected about 100 descriptors for 10 different levels. We have a little bit more granular levels than original CFR. We put the pre-A1 and up to B2.2 levels. We have 10 levels. And for 10 level 5 skill areas, we ended up having 100 descriptors. And then we used the validation and calibration method similar to the original CFR. For this, we collected more than 5,000 students' responses to the Cantor questionnaires, and we calibrated the descriptors using item response theory. And all these student response data are available. So if you are interested in calibration of this kind of descriptor, please contact me. I'm glad to share the data with you. Okay, the second phase starting in 2012 to 2015 is the Rld Pipeline. We produced various accompanying resources for the CEFR-J, word list, the grammar profile, and text profile. And we actually, I made the English companion website. We have dedicated website on the CEFR-J.org, but unfortunately, the contents are mostly in Japanese. So I set up this link to the English companion website. Let me show you the site now. This one, there's a list of all the points I made. Corpora used for Ild work, and all the data set for each resource are available for download. So, you can take a look at this site later so that if you are interested, you can just download and try it out. Okay, let me briefly tell you what kind of resources we have been developing. First one is a word list, and recently added a collocation data set. This word list was relatively old. It was actually compiled around 2013, 14, I guess, and revised since then. We have now version 1.6. This was actually created as a result of the analysis of ELT textbooks used in China, Korea, and Taiwan. We didn't focus on a CFR-based text first. Back then, we didn't have an access to that resource. We are interested in how all these neighboring Asian countries and regions teach English from primary school levels. back then, we still didn't introduce English at primary school as a school subject yet. So we are very much keen to what kind of language points or language items are taught at primary school. So we use kind of the compiled different textbook corpus across different countries in those three areas. And we examine the use of core vocabulary throughout the textbooks used in those three regions and match the levels of vocabulary against the CEFR levels. Fortunately, English vocabulary profile was just out back then. So we decided to compare our list against the English vocabulary profile. And amazingly, when we had vocabulary common throughout all the A1 level, pseudo A1 level text using China, Korea, and Taiwan, we picked 1,000 words for A1 vocabulary. Only 100 words are different from the English vocabulary profiles first level, A1 level. But when you go up to B1, B2 level, the gap is getting bigger. We found about 1,000 words which are different from the EVP. So we decided to add those 1,000 words in our list. So we ended up having about 7,500 words. Actually, more detailed information is available at Mizumoto-san's website. He created a very excellent word list tool. I forgot the name, but his site had several different options, but you can choose CEFR-J word list for that. And Mizumoto-san's site gives us explanation about the characteristics of the vocabulary list, especially the CEFR-J word list, because it got a lot of compound nouns, hyphenated nouns, some multi-word units. So some people may be a little bit careful about using our list. Recently, we would like to tell you that we prepared a collocation data set to, maybe change to this one. This one, collocation data set released in September 2022. This is a list of collocation pairs extracted from parsed BNC. We syntactically parsed BNC with a stanza, and we picked the collocation pairs whose minimum frequency is over 5. And for each collocation pair, the CFR level of the node and the collocate is specified. And the data set lists all the collocation pairs with quite useful information such as dispersion measure, DP, Greece's DP, and 8 different association measures. Let me tell you the data. This is the data. It's actually in CSV format, but you have all the pair of adjective noun frame. We have 4 different types of frame, but for each one, you have a CFR level for individual node and collocate, and the dependency relationship, and co-occurrence, and all the relevant statistics to produce association measures, DP, MI, MI3, T-score, and chi-square. So if you are interested in how CFR level vocabulary, like a CEFR-J word list or English vocabulary profile, can give you the power to create new multi-word units. That's very important questions for us teachers and learners. How powerful that kind of limited amount of vocabulary can be when we consider the multiple combination of the words. And this data set can tell you a lot of interesting things. So, this data set is actually freely available. When you go to this companion website, there's some explanation, and you can download all these collocation frame and the data set. The number is quite good. So, if you are interested in this kind of a collocation analysis, it might be interesting if you can ask native speakers to guess, the relative importance of collocation sets listed here. You can pick first 1,000 word collocation pairs and ask native speakers to rate them about the importance. And then all these CFR level combination and also association measure, how they predict the importance that judged by the native speakers. That kind of a collocation naturalness or importance is a very, very interesting and important topic. So I would like you to, I'd like somebody to actually investigate it. My postgraduate student is actually working on it, and he helps me develop this kind of a database. But I think it's a good accompanying resource for the CEFR-J word list. Now let's move on to the grammar profile and text profile. In order to profile text characteristics or grammar appearances or occurrences in the text, we need corpora. So we use the following 4 corpora. While the Cambridge team in English profile project, they use only learner corpus. But we figured that when you look at only the learner corpus, the complete mastery or the period when they start using the language as a sort of output, first output, can be assessed, but there's usually a time lag between the teachers introducing the certain grammatical items and the learner's actual output. So I think it's very important to profile this kind of a CFR levels for vocabulary and grammar by looking at both input side and output side. The Council of Europe document says the mastery of the language points, which a little bit bothers me, because the second language learners like us, the complete mastery is, is a kind of dream, and we never know when actually learners reach the complete mastery. So I think it's very useful to profile learners, the language points according to the CFR by looking at both input as well as output. For input corpora, we picked 2 originally made corpus. One is the CFR-based course books published in the UK, which comprised of 96 course books. Unfortunately, because of the copyright reasons, the raw text are not publicly available. It's internal for internal use. However, we try to produce all the frequency information, analyzed results data from these corpora. Another one is the government authorized secondary school textbooks. Size is about close to 2 million and 1 million. And for the output corpus, the 2 learner corpora, which I was involved in the creating it, were used. One is the JEFO corpus, and another one is an SETGLE corpus. Both of them are sort of, reclassified according to the CFR levels. So this is a JEFO CFR corpus and NSGLE CFR version, I call it. And grammar profile. So when we go to the company website, when you go to the grammar profile, there's a list of grammar items. So when you click here, you can actually see all the grammar items, 263 list. There's some Japanese, but here, when you look at right rightmost column, there's a regular expressions to search for these grammar patterns. So if you're interested, you can export this kind of you can import this kind of list of regular expressions to automatically search for grammar patterns. Of course, you cannot search for particular usage patterns, involving functions or meanings, but surface grammatical patterns can be searched with these regular expression queries. And also, we having all the numerical data and analyzed, we prepared user-friendly, teacher-friendly version of the grammar profile. When you click this one, all the profile information are visually presented for each grammar items. And then you can always check whether our profiling method is appropriate or not by looking at the original data set. Well, this data is quite, unique and complicated. So you really have to. We haven't done much research yet. This is a really nice data set, but we really need to take a closer look at it. First one is a CFL-based ELT coursebook. This is the frequency of 263 grammar items across coursebook. Let me show you the coursebook data here. These are all different, grammar items in the column. This is determiner. This is quantifier. And this is a adverb, complementizer. And then you have all the different files. There are 96 different CFR coursebook files. This is the number of tokens for each file. And here's the CFR level. So, you can use this kind of a matrix for machine learning purposes. If you are interested, you can do clustering or classification over these data. And this one is a entire CFR level textbooks. But when you go down to the second items, this is actually divided by 2 or 3 parts. What do you mean by that? Each coursebook is labeled, this is A1 coursebook, say A1 level coursebook. But in order to have a more granular profiling for the CEFR-J, we have 3 sublevels under A1, A1.1, 1.2, 1.3. That's why we divide the coursebook into 3 parts, part 1, part 3, and part 1, part 2, part 3. That is a former 1/3, the first 1/3, and second 1/3, and the third 1/3. We divide the text into 3 parts. So this information is based upon the breakdown of 263 grammar items across each, each separated or divided sections of the coursebook. That will give you more information about, at the very beginning of the A1 coursebook, what kind of grammar items are, introduced or used. That kind of information is quite useful in order to be a little bit more granular in analyzing the profile of the grammar items. Similar thing can be done for learner Corpora, and for this learner Corpora, very interesting thing is that JEFO corpus is lots of it's got lots of errors because JEFO corpus is written by junior high school and senior high school students in Japan. They started learning English, first year junior high school students. So their English is rather really messy. Lots of Japanese in it, and constructions are really awful. So we asked the native speakers to proofread the text, and we made the revised proofread version of this JEFO corpus. And this one actually showed you both corrected version and original version. So you can see how the grammar items are used at the particular level, CFR level, what kind of grammar constructions are used to send the same message, which intended to be, well, the students intended to say but failed. You know what I mean? So when you compare that kind of a proofread version against the original version, you can do a quite unique way of profiling of output data. So it's already 45. So let me just go through. And there is one website by the Tokyo Institute of Technology, Okumura Lab. They used our grammar profile information to check the CFR levels of the English text. The interesting thing is that when you insert or input the text here and click submit, then it will display all the list of grammar items found in the text and vocabulary level and CFR level. So, I would like you to try. The estimation is still a little bit sometimes off the mark, but I think it's quite, useful as a kind of application. So we would like to improve the quality or accuracy of the tool. For text profile, we owe much to the team at Osaka University, especially postgraduate student Mizushima-san and Arase sensei, and also our member Satoru Uchida from Kyushu University. So they actually came up with various metrics showing text complexity and also text difficulty. So overall, they chose 4 different measures, common measures such as word length, types TTR, and lexical profile measure based upon the CEFR-J word list, and complexity measure. This is a dependency or, parsed tree based metrics, and finally grammar measures. When you go to the text profile, here is the explanation of common measures. And you can see the data set here. When you click this PDF, then it will show all the, all the scores for each CFR level text for particular text characteristic measure. So this means word length 1 to 3 letter, the ratio of words which have only 1 to 3 letters. As you can see, A1 level text 0.5, but the number decreasing. That means the higher the level, the longer the words. When you go to the average word length, see, this is increasing from A1 to C. Like this, you can check what kind of metrics really, are important in defining the CFR levels of the text. So this is again quite useful for you to explore using machine learning and text mining kind of techniques in order to identify what kind of metrics are useful to judge or estimate the CFR level of the text. And Uchida-san actually created a very nice website called CVLA. And CVLA actually, estimate the CFR level quite accurately if it is longer than like 500 words. And he used a linear model using ARI readability measure and the verb per sentence, and average difficulty, that is a CFR level vocabulary, and B level words against A level words. These 4 predictor variables can explain a lot about CFR level. That's why she says. So it's very interesting attempt, and I really want to explore further, that the more accurate and valid measures of lexical complexity and text complexity. Well, this is the final comment. I'll just finish in 5 minutes. I'd like to share some recent progress in the CEFR-J project. These are still pretty much work in progress at the moment, but we are at the stage of trying to use all these resources we created and put those resources into a particular, a situation where English is being taught. And we selected one high school in Kyoto as a pilot school, and we go there and have a kind of workshop with the teachers, and we decided to sort of see how the CFL kind of instructions and also related the resources we developed can help them teach better and learn better. So this is what we call the CEFR-J Kyoto project. So last year we made classroom observations in term 2 and recorded lesson 5. There are about 7 or 8 classes for lesson 5, but we recorded everything, including pair work and discussion within the pair or groups. So not only, the entire classroom discourse, but also individual students' conversation or practice in pair and groups are recorded. And also we recorded the end of the term spoken interviews as a performance test. And after the lesson 5, we created a classroom corpus from these 2 types of recording, right after lesson 5. And analyze the classroom discourse by the 3 teachers involved in the project. And we provide the sketch engine so that we can take a look at the, visually what kind of things are happening in the corpus. And the teachers are also, look at the concordance lines and try to check, what they actually said in the classroom. Then we had a workshop with those high school teachers in the end of term 2. This time we gave them more information about the CFR and how to improve their lessons using can-do descriptors and how assessment should be made by designing better performance tests. So, lesson 5, no treatment. So we just, go there and made observations. Lesson 8, we intervene slightly and gave them some, suggestions and advice. But we didn't actually create any test tasks or performance tasks. And we compared lesson 5 and lesson 8, how teachers differ or change in terms of their maybe performance in the classroom and also their attitude toward the lessons or, objectives of the lesson. And this is still tentative results, but when we compare lesson 5 and 8, this is a total number of, language used in different activity types during the lesson. In 2022, let's see, when you look at the lesson 5, the percentage of the most largest proportion of the activity is the text explanation. Unfortunately, in lesson 5, some of the teachers focused on the text explanation in their mother tongue. So that's 35.7%. But when you look at the lesson 8, 40.2% are spent for communication. So, they reduced the amount of explaining text in Japanese, and they moved to focus more on communication practice using English. So by looking at this kind of distribution of language activities within the classroom, monitoring the activities by the 3 teachers, there are some individual differences, but we can see some changes. And it's very hard to objectively say that this is the effect of a CFR actually working in the classroom. I can't say it now, but we would like to, try to identify what kind of variables are affecting the change. And by controlling some of the variables, what kind of change will be shown next time, So we are hoping to replicate this kind of study for the next year. And this is a concluding remark, but our university TUFS has, as I said, 28 different foreign language majors. So what we are hoping for, and also president of the TFS is wanting me to do this, but we would like to sort of construct a generic framework for teaching foreign language and apply that framework to work for 28 different foreign languages. To do that, we have a framework and some language-specific resources and language-specific test. And then we have a e-learning or in-person environment where instructions are provided and monitoring progress using can-do test batteries. I haven't, today I didn't tell you about anything about the test, but we are developing can-do based test for 28 languages now. So it's a huge project, but I think it's worth it. And we are hoping to report on the progress and also the outcome of the research in the future. That's all for today. Sorry about rushing. If you miss some of the points, you can go to the companion site, and hopefully you can enjoy some of the data we created. Okay, thank you very much.
So thanks so much, Yukio. A really interesting talk, and thanks for sharing so many amazing resources, both in English and in Japanese. The audience are really appreciative of sharing of those resources and for your part in their development and for progressing the field of corpus linguistics and combining it with this hugely important framework of reference for languages and for doing a lot of the hard work so that we don't have to. So I've managed to get a number of questions from the audience members, which I will go through now. I think we've got time just for the ones I managed to collect. And both Peter and Sean kind of asked similar questions related to how far away you think the automatic grading of text or spoken production by CEFR levels might be. So thinking about applications for automated writing assessment.
At the moment, some of the companies are already trying to develop automated scoring for speech. I think LinguSkills will be able to do that. At the moment they have human scoring, but they are working on the automated scoring. So probably they will implement it in the near future. I helped with one of the Japanese companies called Progos. They developed a business person speaking test. And actually, it's both manually scored as well as automated scoring. It's quite sort of we are not sure how to do it, but end-to-end deep learning stuff. So we are not very much sure what's going on inside. It's quite black box, but there is a technology. If you have lots of data, then probably you can do end-to-end sort of machine learning.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of recent applications. I've had a play around with GPT-3, for example, the AI system, which is just absolutely blowing my mind of what is possible. And when they combine that with Whisper, I think, which is like automated AI for speech recognition and speech to text, and we're gonna just be much closer than before to that. Okay, questions continue then. I've got a question from Mendy who asks whether it's possible to provide the benchmark survey questions from Phase 1 CEFR-J 2004 to 2007. I'm not sure if that's possible.
Well, could you say the question again? Benchmark for what?
The benchmark survey questions from Phase 1 CEFR-J 2004 to 2007. Maybe that could be a question actually you might respond to by email, perhaps, Mendy?
Oh,
Maybe
benchmark survey. Okay, yeah. Actually, there was a report out, but most of them are in Japanese.
Yeah.
But these days you can actually use machine translation to
get
Japanese to English would be quite good. So you might be interested. Yeah, I can send you the PDF file for that. Yes.
That's okay.
So let me know the email address.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that person will contact you personally for that, so they can get your email address from your website. So thanks for that. Basim asks, he's using a similar method to check lexical complexity in students' argumentative essays between B1 and B2 level. How feasible is his approach in comparison with the ones that you presented tonight?
There are so many different lexical and also textual measures like that. So it's really empirical question, whether there's any best set of measures or not. It might depend on the text types. It might depend on the the level of learners' proficiency. So you really have to do that empirically for yourself to check whether the particular measures are really appropriate for your purpose.
I think that's a great answer. It kind of ties into the next question here from Camellia. It says, what are the differences between the two-level checkers mentioned in your slides?
What are the differences? Yeah, that's a good question, because two different external research groups are sort of working with us. We sort of, asked to focus on a different aspect. The first one focuses on a grammar check. So all the list of grammars will be highlighted, and also they trying to estimate the CFR level, primarily focus on grammar knowledge, grammatical knowledge, whereas the textual level is more like a complexity or textual metrics.
Yep.
So maybe combining those two would produce much better result, but that's for the future question for us. Yeah,
that's true. And the Pearson resource that you shared as well, they also have a level checker on their website.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah. So I didn't take a closer look at it, but yeah, I really want to look into it.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. So a question now related to the workshops for high school teachers. How long are the workshops, and how well do teachers deal with the Corpus tools such as Sketch Engine? This is from Paula Pinto, who also runs workshops with high school teachers on Corpus tools. So in Brazil. So how are you getting on with the
yes,
workshops that you're doing in Japan?
we have a whole afternoon for the workshop, so maybe 4 or 5 hours. But we didn't spend so much time on concordancing. You know, we do not actually aim to have those teachers actually work on the concordancing on their own. We just provide all the data, using the sketch engine in front of them, and they ask a lot of questions. We make a query and try to show, the points that they want to see.
Yeah.
So in doing so, they become familiar with some of the functions with the concordances, and maybe in the next workshop, they might want to, do the hands-on workshop. So, gradually, it's very important. Gradually, sort of, we make them become more interested.
It's a really interesting take on the training. Usually in the training, we show the functions first, and we kind of ask them, what do you think? But I guess you've done it a different way,
actually they have their own
questions.
very personal, teaching issues. So, it's very important to relate those issues to their own, to the concordance data.
Yeah,
right.
100%. Yeah, that's something that I've seen so often. And Paula, I'm sure that you've also seen that in your own workshops. A final question then before we wrap up, and again, it's about the workshops. What kind of feedback was given by the teachers to the researchers, and from the researchers to the teachers?
What kind of feedback? Yes. Well, basically, we trying to demonstrate by showing the concordance, or that kind of a breakdown of the time spent on a different stages of activities. We would like to make sure that the time for learners to use language is important, but by looking at the breakdown, it was quite limited in the first lesson. So that's why we sort of encourage them to think about how to increase the amount of using language in the classroom. That's the first point. And that is linked to the communicative language teaching promoted by the Council of Europe. So maybe we need to change our mindset about the goal of the the classroom or learning objectives of the class. So not just grammar instruction and reading and grammar exercises, but more focus should be on the activities, some kind of communicative activities. Reading can be part of it, but they shouldn't spend most of the time on reading only. And so from the reading, we start discussing the topic. They get the information from the reading, or you can extend a lot of different communicative activities from the textbooks. But a lot of teachers just trying to focus on how to read text and how to explain grammars in Japan. Yeah. So the data will reveal that if you spend too much on that aspect only, it's very limited for students to actually, communicatively be active.
I mean, I have exactly the same situation in Australia right now, working with teachers who have to teach English as an additional language. So these are students who do not speak English as a first language, but they're in mainstream Australian education, and they have to understand these difficult texts, like maybe Shakespeare or American literature or something that the mainstream students have to deal with, but then how do they then break down what's happening in that text to somebody whose English proficiency is not so high? And this kind of tool can really help, to help with that, the explanation of the text, and to save time doing that, and instead to use the tools to speed up that process greatly. To make salient the key language at the different proficiency levels would be so useful. So I'll certainly be demonstrating some of the software that you've shown us today with those teachers very soon. But I think that brings us to the end of our session. I think I'd like to thank you so much for
okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to the talk. And I really, enjoy myself. Yeah, thanks very much.
I think we topped out at 150 participants, so another really well-attended session.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And I'd just like to plug
I really appreciate you coming.
Next week coming up with Dr. Maggie Charles at the University of Oxford, who's going to present on student autonomy in data-driven learning for English for academic purposes. So yet another fantastic speaker, another fantastic topic. But let's thank again Professor Dr. Yukio Tono for his
Thank you very much. And good evening, good night in Japan.
Thanks so much. And
thank you.
Good evening and good morning, good afternoon again, wherever you are in the world. So I'm going to stop the recording here and wish everybody the best.
Thank you. Goodbye.